Greetings and welcome to Panavia. This is Steve. I wanted to talk about our LT1 project here for a little bit and some of the similarities and dissimilarities that the LT1, the Generation 5 motor, has with its LS counterparts and small block Chevys in general. And maybe we can learn something and help you get an LT1 or something else in your vehicle, or if you need our help, I'll be more than happy to do that. So this is a 2014 and above LT1 in a dry sump configuration. If you watched our other video, you'll know that we explained dry sump. We're going to go into a little bit of that here and talk about how things are hooked up and what goes on and fire this thing up. So this is our engine test run stand. We have a little code reader that we hook onto it so we can take a look at things. This is really just a Frankenstein kind of stand to get us going and get things all hooked up and just test something, make sure it can run. We actually run our antique engines on the same run stand as well. The idea about running something on an engine run stand before you install it in a vehicle is you can find out the problems that you have with an engine before you spend 16 to 24 to 100 hours putting something into a custom fabricated scenario, or like this GT350 right here, a just classic scenario. The idea, which is just one of prevention. If something can be fixed and addressed on an engine run stand, it's a lot easier to get to everything than it is to try to get it back out of the car and fix something, especially since this has some special modifications to it. This LT1, like we were talking about before, is from the Z51 Corvette from 2014 and above. So if you went into a Chevrolet dealership and you bought yourself one of the new Grand Sport Corvettes, this is the pretty much exact engine that you get, albeit this one has a couple of different things on the front. I hooked up an LT4 or modern Z06 air cleaner kind of just sticking up there, so I had something that I knew was the right dimension, right length, so I wasn't fighting anything with a mass airflow sensor or intake tube until we get it into the car. This engine setup is very special and very specific, as what we've done is we've modified the front end to accept a few things and be able to have a modern Corvette alternator, high amperage alternator, attached to it and nestled within the V of the engine. You'll notice that this is an alternator only package, so there's no power steering, there's no air conditioning. That could be done later, but this particular install is going to be just an alternator install with a manual steering rack. So some things to talk about LT4s. Let's talk about LT4s in depth and some of the differences. So this is not a regular fuel injected motor, but this is direct injected motor. And if we could actually remove our intake here, you'd see all sorts of interesting, wonderful, new modern direct fuel injection items. Direct fuel injection operates at a much higher PSI than traditional fuel injection. Traditional fuel injection operates at about 60 psi. Ford, it operates at 40 psi. This one pre-feeds the pump at 70, 80, 90 psi, feeds to the back of the engine, and then gets multiplied inside the direct injection system to anywhere from 750 psi all the way to 1600 psi. I've seen about 1300 in quick throttle blips, but we haven't really looked at the diagnostic information of this yet as far as that thorough. So let's talk about LT and LS differences. So since this is an LT block, this is the new Generation 5 6.2 liter, and that's about where the differences, that's about where the similarities and the differences begin. You do have some interesting things that will port over, such as the coil packs. The coil packs are pretty much the same form factor as far as bolting and the same pin form factor and same voltage factor as the LS. So if you have a hot rod coil pack that you like, you'll probably be able to use them on your LT. Very important with the dry sump LT that it has proper connections for PCV. There are certain hoses you can buy from GM and then razor blade off the hard lines and use fuel emission hose basically to connect your PCVs together, and then you have your PCV connected to, where is it, here, down here, here we go, on this. So on the stock intake, it's very important to have the PCV fresh air actually be behind the mass airflow sensor. The idea being that any air that the engine consumes or produces comes in through the air cleaner assembly and then is measured by the mass air sensor. So it's not a good thing to have open valve covers. Now, on a dry sump engine, you have no oil pan to speak of. It's basically a little transaction case center there. And I'm going to turn this thing off.